Part 2. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 11. The glass room on the third floor had been cleaned, and all the bloody handprints had been cleaned up. In the cold winter, the room was full of heating, and Chang Sui, wearing pajamas, lay on the bed and fell asleep slowly. Lin Yi was sitting on the inside of the door of the glass room, reading a book with great interest. Outside the door, Wang Lanbin, wearing a thick cotton jacket, stood outside. His face was serious, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy, angry, sad, or happy, but the cold light flashed in his eyes from time to time, and it was obvious that he was not very happy. His eyes swept over Lin Yi in the glass room from time to time, and his right hand was in his coat pocket, as if holding something. The atmosphere was quiet and strange, and it soon reached 12 o'clock. Dang dang dang. The old clock in the villa rang, and the whole villa could hear the sound. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes, and a chill spread from all around. Even a room full of heating could not stop this cold air. From the left side of the glass room, from the direction of the garden, a trace of frost spread along the ground and the ceiling toward Chang Sui's bed. Lin Yi did not move, but slowly opened the True Destiny Daoji. An illusory figure appeared in his eyes. It was a man in a suit, with blood flowing down his head. His eyes bulged out, and it looked like his eyeballs were about to fall out. His face was covered with blood, his mouth was open, and he seemed to be saying something, full of anger and rage, looking at Chang Sui lying on the bed fiercely. The man's hands were pitch black, and the nails of his 10 fingers were slender and deep, as if they could swallow light. The ghost in the suit came to Chang Sui's bed with an icy breath. He looked at Chang Sui with resentful eyes, and he yelled at Chang Sui crazily, as if he was telling something. But Lin Yi heard nothing, and the silent glass room was still silent. Chang Sui was wearing pajamas at this time, covered with a quilt, and her brows were constantly frowning. The whole body seemed to be chilled by the cold air emitted by the ghost in the suit, and she unconsciously rolled up the quilt. In the cold, Chang Sui's face was a little distorted, and her originally charming face became a little hideous. As if she was having a nightmare, her whole body was trembling. The more the ghost in the suit yelled and cursed, the more emotional he became, and he stretched out his hands. The back of his hands was pitch black, and the skin was shriveled, like a mummy. The front was bright red, dripping with drops of bright red blood. Lin Yi was absolutely surprised. This was obviously a ghost, but the blood dripping from his hands was real, and it could even leave traces in reality. Lin Yi didn't understand the principle behind this. However, with 3 years of experience in dealing with supernatural events, Lin Yi could still see it. This ghost might be close to affecting reality. Seeing him reach out to grab Chang Sui's neck, Lin Yi's voice suddenly rang out. In this weird and silent glass room, it was so harsh. "Brother, it's so late, and you come to a lady's room. It doesn't seem to be very polite." The ghost's body stiffened, turned his head and stared at Lin Yi. The ghost in the suit looked at Lin Yi with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Then there was endless anger, roaring at Lin Yi, and his hideous face was madly telling something. But Lin Yi couldn't hear what it was saying, and there seemed to be a space between them. The ghost became more and more angry, and then he couldn't hold it anymore, and rushed towards Lin Yi frantically. The black and blood-red claws were raised high, with 10 fingers spread out, aiming at Lin Yi's head. Lin Yi looked at the ghost in the suit and slowly raised his right hand. A green spirit wave flowed with the airflow, and a light golden color covered his right hand like thin paper. With a light wave, a punch was thrown. The last one came first and hit the chest of the ghost in the suit. Bang! A kind of muffled sound in the dark, the ghost instantly broke into pieces, turned into countless smoke, and disappeared without a trace. The cold dissipated, and everything seemed as if nothing had happened. However, Lin Yi frowned slightly. He could feel that the vengeful spirit was not dead, but just temporarily disappeared in reality. It's really weird. At this time, the light in his eyes dimmed and returned to its original state. It's the first time I see a vengeful spirit that has not yet taken shape. It's interesting. The glass door behind Lin Yi was opened, and a cold wind came in and out. Wang Lanbin walked in with a nervous look. How is it, what were you talking to just now? Looking at the empty glass room, Wang Lanbin showed a puzzled look. Lin Yi glanced at him, that thing did come, but it left again. Wang Lanbin's face sank when he heard it, staring at Lin Yi, then why don't you get rid of it? I invited you here to do things. Lin Yi sneered when he heard it, if it can be solved so easily, you can solve it yourself. At this time, Chang Sui sat up, her whole body was covered with cold sweat, and she shivered suddenly when the cold wind hit her. At this time, she saw Lin Yi and Wang Lanbin. I had a nightmare again just now. I dreamed that my husband came to me to kill me. Lin Yi looked at Chang Sui and smiled, just now a ghost in a suit appeared here. I saw him standing by your window, roaring at you with his fangs and claws, and trying to reach out to grab you, so I stopped him. However, it hasn't materialized yet, so I can't kill him. Chang Sui was stunned. What does this mean? Lin Yi smiled slightly, just like I told you during the day. There are 3 stages in the formation of resentful spirits, and I can only deal with these resentful spirits in the 3rd stage. Chang Sui's face showed a trace of contemplation, then what to do next? Wait until he condenses into shape and can interfere with reality. At that time, while it is taking shape, it will also lose the ability to disperse. Chang Sui felt a little uneasy when she heard this. This is the only way, but how long will it take? Lin Yi spread his hands and said, I don't know about this. It depends on the situation. So I will be here these days. As long as it completes its final transformation, he will be dead. There is a high probability that he will not show up today. I will go back first and come back tomorrow. With that said, Lin Yi turned around and went downstairs without waiting for the 2 of them to answer. Looking at Lin Yi's leaving figure, Chang Sui frowned slightly. At this time, Wang Lanbin came over and sat next to Chang Sui. His tone was slightly gentle, is everything okay? Chang Sui leaned lightly on Wang Lanbin's shoulder, it's okay, it's much better than the previous 2 days. Is this person trustworthy? Wang Lanbin had a trace of doubt in his eyes. Chang Sui closed her eyes, seeming to be recuperating, and said in a soft voice, don't worry, you know what happened to the Hongliang family. A maid he played with before was secretly poisoned by him because she was pregnant with his child. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 12. The maid was later buried in his manor. Some time ago, there were rumors that the maid turned into a vengeful spirit and came to his house. He was scared to death at the time, and he found Lin Yi after asking around. It is said that Lin Yi specializes in the removal of vengeful spirits and is quite famous in the industry. He solved the vengeful maid that night with high efficiency. It should be no problem to ask him to do it this time. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. But I hope he won't find anything, otherwise. The voice gradually became low, and the light in the glass house became dimmer. Lin Yi walked in the snow, the cold wind was blowing, and the city of Honglian was covered in silver. The drooping branches of roadside plants were covered with white snow, and the streets were covered with snow. The world seemed to have become free of filth at this moment. As he walked, Lin Yi thought, it's really troublesome. The cold wind blew, and the weather was freezing. He exhaled a breath of white air and looked at the dark sky, without a single star. It's really suitable weather. It's not simple to have resentment in your body, he. After 2 dry laughs, Lin Yi returned to the Wanchai Wu. Brandy was no longer at the bar, it seemed that he went to rest. Back to his bedroom, Lin Yi took out a diary. This diary is very thick, and 1/3 of it is filled with text. Chinese, a completely different kind of hieroglyphics from this world. No one knows what he wrote on it. Turning to a new page, Lin Yi took out a pen and began to write a message. Red Lotus Calendar December 31, 2019. Ghost, second stage, dreaming, confirmed existence. During the dreaming stage, the only ability of the ghost to affect reality is the cold air it carries, which can form frost. Spiritual waves can drive away ghosts in the dreaming stage, but cannot kill them. Chang Sui owns the villa, and there are ghost illusions, but they cannot affect reality. There are huge problems and need to be treated with caution. Continue tomorrow, waiting for the ghost to take shape. After recording the diary, Lin Yi put down his pen and sat on his bed. 5 hearts facing the sky, with the thought, the Great Power Diamond Sutra in his body began to operate, and his whole body exuded a faint golden color. His spirit left his body in an erratic manner and saw countless light spots that permeated the outside world. The spirit came into contact with the light spots, and they slowly fell into Lin Yi's body along the spirit. With the flow of qi, a trace of golden qi slowly took shape and finally gathered in the qi sea in the abdomen. After condensing a trace of golden qi, Lin Yi's spirit felt tired, and he knew that he could only practice here today. During this period, he practiced the Vajra Sutra every day. Almost every day, he would refine a trace of golden qi. There are currently 2 types of qi in his body. One is that the external light spots merged into the condensed Vajra qi of his own body and turned into gold. The other is the qi generated by the body itself when the Vajra Sutra was circulated. Based on the martial arts information currently circulating on the internet, he deduced the approximate names of these 2 kinds of qi. The scientific name of the qi generated by oneself is called food qi. The so-called food qi is the qi formed after the food is absorbed by the stomach and intestines and then refined by the exercises, so it is called food qi. The golden qi is named essence qi. What is essence qi? The qi formed by collecting the essence of heaven and earth and integrating the food qi of oneself is called essence qi. It has long been Lin Yi's habit to practice the Vajra Sutra every day. Year after year, 365 days have never been interrupted. After today's practice, his spirit has reached the limit. In his spiritual consciousness, he stared at a scripture that was shining with a hazy glow. It opened the first page, on which was a human figure with an unclear face. The human figure's hands were constantly changing the seals, a total of 81, which were exactly the seals he had practiced so far. However, the scene at this time was different from the past. After the hazy human figure completed 81 seals, a lotus formed by the seal appeared on the top of the human figure's head. A lotus seed with a radiant light on the top of the head was covered with mysterious patterns. The light of the lotus seed flowed into the head of the human figure and turned into 2 points of green light in his eyes. The green light was in the shape of a. Does this Yiling Jing have anything to do with Buddhism? Lin Yi thought about it, and began to slowly pinch out seals with his hands. Every time a seal was completed, the true destiny in his mind would tremble slowly, and a spiritual wave would surge out of it, quickly washing over his whole body. Back and forth, again and again, a total of 81 times, Lin Yi's spirit was shocked. In a moment of evasion, he felt that his consciousness seemed to have merged with the world. Hazy, he seemed to see infinite brilliance covering the world. At this moment, he seemed like a god in the sky, watching the myriad changes in the world. Cock-a-doodle-doo. The loud crowing of a rooster woke Lin Yi from his deep meditation. A ray of sunlight shone into the room from the window. Lin Yi looked at the bright sky outside and stretched. It's really fast, it's already dawn. Since practicing the Great Diamond Sutra and the Yiling Sutra, he has basically not slept again. There's still a lot of work to do today. Judging from the appearance of the vengeful spirit, it will only take a few days for it to affect reality. With a gleam in his eyes, Lin Yi jumped up. Pushing open the door, Brandy had already gotten up and was making breakfast and cleaning at the bar in the lobby of the Wanchaiwu. Sitting on the familiar sofa, there was a cup of coffee and 5 ready-made sandwiches on the table. To practice martial arts, a lot of food is needed. These sandwiches are all delicacies that use nourishing herbs as auxiliary materials and beef as the main material. Swallow the sandwiches in 3 or 5 bites, and soon, the warm feeling flows out of the stomach and spreads all over the body. The food chi flows, quickly taking in these warm currents, and finally merging into the sea of chi. An hour later, Lin Yi slowly exhaled and felt satisfied. Ring, ring, ring. Lin Yi looked down and saw that his cell phone rang. Old Wei, how is the matter I asked you to investigate going? A deep voice sounded, the investigation is clear, and the file has been sent to your mailbox. But you'd better be careful, the woman you are investigating this time has a complicated background. It seems to be related to an ancient organization. Lin Yi frowned. Organization? What organization? I don't know about that. I found out that the cash of her company will regularly flow into a very old bank. This bank is a private bank with a history of more than 300 years. In the past, this bank caused many things and had many enemies. But these enemies eventually disappeared silently. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 13. The news I got is that this bank seems to be founded by an ancient and powerful organization. I stopped investigating after I got here. You'd better be careful. Don't touch some things and people. Lin Yi's expression gradually became solemn when he heard this. Okay, I'll transfer the money to your account. Beep. After hanging up the phone, Lin Yi clicked on his mailbox and found a document inside. He opened the document and began to read it. The first thing he saw was a character information. Name, Chang Sui. Age, 35 years old. Social status, Vice President of Honglian City Jewelry Association, President of Bayu Jewelry Store. Social relations, he has business dealings with many upper-class companies and groups in Honglian City, and has deep connections with the wives of various officials in Honglian City. They often attend various dances and activities together. He has a good relationship with people. He regularly remits 10,000 gold coins to the Scholar Bank every month for 3 years. Seeing this, Lin Yi was shocked. Wow, 10,000 gold coins is equal to 10 million RMB, which is 200 million a year. 3 years. It seems that her husband disappeared 3 years ago. The reason for her husband's disappearance is indeed unusual. Continue to browse the document and soon reached the second page. Information on relatives and family career background, Chang Sui's origin is unknown. She married Wang Jiande, the former president of Bayu Jewelry Store, in 2010 of the Red Lotus calendar. After investigation, there is no information about any relatives. Her origin is secret. In 2015, Wang Jiande disappeared. According to the Red Lotus law, Chang Sui should have inherited Wang Jiande's family business after 3 years, but through unknown means, she became the president of Bayu Jewelry Store. During this period, some people opposed it, but in the end, the opponents were fired from the company and disappeared. Awesome, it seems that Wang Jiande has long died at the hands of Chang Sui. That's why he turned into a fierce ghost. Is it for revenge? There are also many evil spirits in Chang Sui's house. This woman is really not easy to deal with. Lin Yi suddenly saw a photo. This is Zhang Tianyu, the former vice president of Bayu Jewelry who opposed Chang Sui. Name, Zhang Tianyu. Age, 45 years old. Identity, former vice president of Bayu Jewelry. Other information, he was fired from Bayou Jewelry in August 2015 and his whereabouts are unknown. Seeing this person's photo and name, Lin Yi shook his head. I'm afraid I have to be really careful this time. The photo of the man in front of him was one of the illusory faces he saw outside Chang Sui's villa. This Zhang Tianyu had long died in Chang Sui's house. Slowly putting down the phone, Lin Yi fell into deep thought. Brandy saw that Lin Yi seemed to have digested it, and walked over with a notebook. Boss, this month's rent of 15 gold coins has been paid, and this month's food consumed about 10 gold coins. Daily income, plus this month's Honglian K's order, a total of 26 gold coins. This gold coin must be paid to me as salary. There is no money on the account at present. Lin Yi yawned when he heard it. Why are you panicking? Didn't I just get a big order? After getting it, we can at least last for 3 months, don't worry. Manager, our store has basically been just maintaining for the past 3 years. If this goes on, if we don't get any orders that month, we will be out of money. We have to find a way as soon as possible. Lin Yi was bored and rolled his eyes. Don't worry, it's not that easy for the Wanchaiwu to go bankrupt. Lin Yi just smiled. Bad guys don't die, and evil spirits will never stop. Brandy heard this, helpless, could only pout, walked to the bar, and continued his work. Ding ding ding. Accompanied by the ringing of the doorbell, a man and a woman walked into the Wanchaiwu. They sat in the seats by the window, and Brandy ran over diligently. 2 guests, this is the menu. The male guest took the menu and began to look through it. The female guest took out her mobile phone and lay on the sofa to look through the web pages. It was obvious that the 2 of them came out for breakfast. After Lin Yi finished his breakfast, he got up and walked out of the Wanchaiwu when he saw the guests coming. Usually, the Wanchaiwu existed as a coffee shop. Walking in the snow, Lin Yi's eyes looked around the street from time to time. On a snowy day, there was not even a dog on the street. Only the shops on the street were still open, supplying various necessities. The vital energy in his body flowed, and he was not afraid of the cold outside. On the contrary, he enjoyed the feeling of the cold wind. The sharp cold wind blew on his face, stinging slightly. It made him feel that he was not dreaming, but really came to a magical world. With all kinds of thoughts, he came to the door of Chang Sui's villa. A faint green light flashed in his eyes, and he frowned slightly. The resentment seems to be getting stronger and stronger. In his sight, the thin black air in the villa became deeper and darker. It seems that there may be an ending tonight. He only discovered the resentment recently. During the period of studying the true destiny, he saw many strange shadows walking on the street every night. Some of them were surrounded by black air and had hideous faces, while others were calm and had no black air. In fact, Lin Yi didn't know whether these black air were resentment. However, thinking of the stories in the vernacular novels, he still named these black air as resentment to make it easier for him to understand. Ding dong. The door of the villa was rang. An expressionless face appeared on the video camera on the door, a maid from Chang Sui's house. After seeing that it was Lin Yi's face, the maid said in a cold voice, "Mr. Lin, please wait." The other party remotely controlled the door to open, and Lin Yi walked in along the road. He walked through the garden road, observing the shadows flashing from time to time in the black air, and entered the mansion 2 minutes later. There was a faint cold breath. Although there was heating in the mansion, there was always a faint coldness. A maid was waiting for Lin Yi. "Mr. Lin, please come this way, the master is in the living room." Lin Yi shrugged and followed the maid through the corridor to the living room. Chang Sui was wearing a lavender fur pajamas, her hair draped behind her back, and she leaned on the sofa in a lazy posture. Holding a cup of black tea in her left hand and reading a newspaper in her right hand, she looked very focused. After Lin Yi arrived, he sat casually on another sofa. Chang Sui saw Lin Yi coming, put down the teacup and newspaper in her hand, and the laziness on her face faded. She looked at Lin Yi seriously. "Mr. Lin, did my husband come again last night?" She looked at the trace of sadness that flashed across Chang Sui's delicate face. Lin Yi smiled slightly. "Indeed, he came again." Taking a deep breath, Chang Sui stabilized her emotions, and a trace of tension appeared on her face. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 14. You said you can't deal with him until he really affects reality. That's right, so you'll just have to endure it for a few more days. Maybe we can find out tonight. Chang Sui's body trembled slightly when she heard this. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. She slowly lowered her head and looked at the teacup in front of her, with an unspeakably complicated look in her eyes. After a few minutes, she raised her head and said, "I'll leave everything to Mr. Lin. Don't worry, I'm very dedicated to taking people's money and helping them to eliminate disasters." Time passes quickly, the day passes quickly, and the night comes. The sky is clear today, with two huge moons hanging high in the sky, casting a silvery glow. The ground covered by white snow makes the whole world a silvery white. In the glass room on the third floor, the floor heating emits enough heat, even though the glass room itself does not have much thermal insulation effect. The room is also warm as spring, and a pot of succulents in the room is also green. Cuckoo! Cuckoo! The 12 o'clock bell rang. Lin Yi looked around with a cold expression. Wang Lanbin next to him was also staying in the room today with a serious expression. Wang Lanbin looked calm, holding the swing stick in both hands. Veins appeared on the back of his hands, and he was obviously nervous. A gloomy coldness slowly rose. The ground covered with floor heating was covered with white frost, and in just a few seconds, the temperature in the room dropped to 0 degrees. Wang Lanbin's breath turned into white mist. His pupils shrank, his body trembled and he stood up, his tense back muscles fully in attack mode. Looking around with vigilant eyes, he might break out and hurt someone at any time. Lin Yi, on the other hand, looked around quietly, waiting for the resentful spirit to appear. A shadow slowly appeared in the room. He turned from virtual reality to a man wearing a suit, but with a bloody hole on his head. Streams of blood slowly flowed down his face and dripped onto the ground. Wang Jiande, the former president, or owner, of Beiyu Jewelry Store. When he appeared in this world again, he had become a wraith. His eyes were full of madness and malice, and his hands were dry and black. 10 nails stretched out, all red, and drops of blood dripped from his hands. Ticking. Ticking. The bright red blood dripped on the floor, so harsh in this dead night. Wang Lanbin looked at Wang Jiande with fear in his eyes. It's really him, how could it be? Hoo-hoo. The sound of heavy breathing indicated that he was extremely nervous and in panic. Lin Yi could see that his body was shaking, and the stick he was holding in both hands was also shaking. This was instinct. The fear of the unknown caused his body to react most directly. Seemingly attracted by Wang Lanbin's voice, Wang Jiande slowly turned his head and looked at Wang Lanbin. For a moment, his anger seemed to be ignited. It's you, you're the adulterer, I'm going to kill you. Whoosh. Like a ferocious beast, he suddenly pounced on Wang Lanbin. He grabbed Wang Lanbin with both hands. The blood-red and shriveled palms, the 10 sharp fingertips, and the ferocious gaze made Wang Lanbin suddenly shocked. At the critical moment of life and death, he rolled on the spot to avoid the attack. He yelled at Lin Yi crazily, "Why don't you take action? I invite you here, not to watch a show." At this time, Wang Lanbin completely lost his initial calmness, and only ferociousness and fear remained on his face. And his roar also woke up Chang Sui, who was sleeping on the bed. She sat up immediately and saw Wang Jiande rushing towards Wang Lanbin. His pupils shrank, and the next moment, an uncontrollable scream sounded, piercing the night sky. Ah! Along with Chang Sui's scream, Wang Jiande was immediately attracted to her. At this time, he landed at the spot where Wang Lanbin was just now, looking at Chang Sui with malicious eyes. "Bitch, I'm going to kill you. Go to hell." Whoosh. Like a ghost, his body flashed towards Chang Sui. But at this time, a figure stood in front of him. "This Mr. Wang, humans and ghosts have different paths since you are dead, how about you just go to your underworld?" Lin Yupi stood in front of Wang Jiande with a smile. Wang Jiande paused in his steps, filled with resentment, and stared at Lin Yi fiercely. His eyes became redder and redder, and a vicious voice spewed out of his mouth. "Go to hell, go to hell." It seemed like he had completely lost his mind. Both claws stretched out and grabbed Lin Yi. The blood-red palms were filled with a strange smell of blood. Facing Wang Jiande's attack, Lin Yi looked slightly solemn. The essence circulates, and at the same time the spiritual wave covers the whole body. A faint blue-gold light covered his fist, and he took one step, just in time to pass through Wang Jiande's claws. A palm hit the resentful spirit's chest. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Ah! A painful roar roared out from the mouth of this resentful spirit. On his chest, the suit was broken, and a rotten black palm print appeared there. A faint circle of blue-gold light was entangled with the black energy in his body. Sizzling. Weird sizzling sounds kept sounding. Wang Jiande's eyes were blood-red. He opened his mouth, and countless blood flowed out of it. The blood was all red, and then a strange scene happened. The countless blood seemed to have life, extending from his mouth and turning into 5 blood-red tentacles. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of breaking through the air sounded, and these blood-red tentacles suddenly slashed towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi's face became solemn. Among the vengeful spirits he had seen before, except for the vengeful spirit maid, he had never encountered such a strange attack. His body shook, and the great power diamond sutra and spiritual waves covering his whole body burst to the limit. His fists blasted out, overwhelming. In an instant, dozens of fist shadows blasted towards the 5 tentacles condensed by blood. Bang bang bang. A huge muffled sound exploded, and Lin Yi's body shook, and a huge force came from his hands. The impact passed along his body to his feet, and countless cracks appeared on the ground. At the same time, Lin Yi's body shook, like a centipede shaking its tail. All the joints in his body shook, and the power rose again. He took a step forward, turned into a cyan gold figure and rushed in front of Wang Jiande. He punched out with both fists, and before the 5 blood-red tentacles spreading from his mouth attacked again, they all hit the opponent's chest and abdomen. Boom! This time, a bigger muffled sound broke out, and Wang Jiande was directly blasted out of the glass room. Crash! The bulletproof glass was shattered by the huge impact force, and his body rolled directly into the garden outside. Lin Yi's eyes condensed at this time and walked out of the glass room. The cold wind blew in, and Chang Sui and Wang Lanbin were both terrified. At the same time, under the stimulation of the cold wind, they also woke up. Chang Sui stood up from the bed, picked up the pajamas beside the bed and wrapped them around her, and was about to follow her out. Wang Lanbin pulled her. "What are you doing? That's a vengeful spirit. Let's go quickly. The house of everything I created." Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 15. Leave this to him. Chang Sui turned to look at Wang Lanbin. There is no safer place than by his side. Just as Chang Sui turned to look at Wang Lanbin, she suddenly noticed that Wang Lanbin's expression suddenly showed fear. Instinctively, a chill rose from the solace of her feet to the top of her head. Chang Sui shrank her body and squatted down instantly. Puff! Ah, help! A figure rushed out from above her head and threw Wang Lanbin to the bed. Chang Sui's pupils shrank, and she saw 2 hands deeply inserted into Wang Lanbin's chest. Several bloody tentacles tied Wang Lanbin up like ropes. It was visible to the naked eye that Wang Lanbin was struggling frantically, looking at Chang Sui, save me quickly. But his body was shrinking rapidly, and countless blood was drawn out and merged into Wang Jiandai's blood tentacles. At this time, a figure rushed in from outside, and Lin Yi came to Chang Sui. He looked at the scene in front of him with a serious look, and a green light flashed in his eyes. He clearly saw that the black resentment of the vengeful spirit transformed by Wang Jiandai had increased nearly doubled. At the same time, he also saw the changes in the other party's body, and countless strange black air was flowing in his body. The essence of the 5 blood tentacles was also black. As the blood tentacles sucked Wang Lanbin's blood, the black air was growing rapidly. And the source of these tentacles came from the head of Wang Jiandai's vengeful spirit. There seemed to be something there, which was the source of all the black air and tentacles. With a narrowed look, he attacked again. His body was like a cannonball, with a blue-gold glow all over his body, and the 5 fingers of his right hand grabbed the back of Wang Jiandai's head. Bang! With a crisp sound, a blood tentacle broke away from Wang Lanbin and chopped down on Lin Yi's head. The sound of breaking through the air sounded, and Lin Yi sneered. The whole body was covered with spiritual waves and essence, and the restraint on this kind of vengeful spirit was very huge. With a clap of his right hand, the tentacle flew away. He could see that his azure gold light touched the blood tentacle. The black energy of the tentacle became blurred and almost collapsed. At this time, he had reached the bedside, and his left hand grabbed Wang Jiandai's back of the head. The crisis came, and Wang Jiandai seemed to sense the danger. He rolled his body to face Lin Yi, and the 6 blood-colored tentacles in his mouth madly slammed down on Lin Yi's head. But at this time, the wailing ring on Lin Yi's right index finger made a huge wailing sound. The sound was very terrifying and instantly hit the resentful spirit Wang Jiandai. His body trembled, and the 5 tentacles that were about to attack Lin Yi all paused. His blood-red eyes were confused, but Lin Yi would not stop. His left hand turned into 5 fingers and suddenly inserted into Wang Jiandai's eyes. Roar! A scream that was completely unlike a human voice sounded, and 5 blood tentacles waved wildly and slammed into Lin Yi's body. His body was shaking, but Lin Yi's whole body was emitting brilliant golden light. The golden light emitted by his Vajra Sutra can strengthen his body. Lingbo has great restraint on these evil spirits. Although he was hit by the blood-colored tentacles, it was still within his tolerance. With a desperate roar, Wang Jiandai's head was directly torn off by Lin Yi's left hand. Bang! He swung his left hand and suddenly threw the head to the ground. Puff! He stepped on it, and like a light bulb, the head exploded directly. A black ring with blood-colored patterns appeared in Lin Yi's sight. It seemed to be a lady's wedding ring with a bright red ruby on it. Lin Yi bent down to pick it up, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. This was obviously something similar to the ring of wailing. Puffs of dark smoke spread out from Wang Jiandai's body. Like a swallow returning to its nest, it enveloped Lin Yi and poured into his body. The spiritual waves in Lin Yi's body were running rapidly, absorbing the black mist. Waves of powerful spiritual waves rushed into his consciousness, where the Yiling Jing was trembling gently. Suddenly a scream came from Chang Sui's mouth, "Ah, let me go." Lin Yi was stunned, his eyes left the ring in his hand, and swept in the direction of Chang Sui. Wang Jiandai, whose head was crushed by him, appeared there, his body intact. However, there was no strange black mist on his body, and he seemed to be a pure vengeful spirit. At this time, he grabbed Chang Sui and broke through the glass wall in the other direction like a hurricane. Lin Yi had no time to stop him, and frowned, "She's not dead." Without any delay, he stepped on the ground and quickly followed. But when he came out and stood in the garden, he saw an empty space. There was no trace of Chang Sui and Wang Jiandai. A flash of green light flashed in his eyes. He looked up and saw a wisp of black resentment disappearing into a pool in the garden. He walked a few steps over. The pool was covered with ice, but the ice cracked at this time, revealing a deep staircase. He frowned. Wow, there is a secret room. Sure enough, this family is not simple. Looking at the steps, Lin Yi took out his mobile phone and turned on the flashlight mode. A bright light illuminated the passage under the stairs, and a faint odor floated out from the space of the stairs. Lin Yi frowned even deeper. Da. Walk slowly along the stairs. Under the illumination of the flashlight, there was a reinforced concrete staircase that extended downward. Lin Yi secretly calculated for a few minutes while walking downward. He walked down at least 200 stairs, each about 20 centimeters high, which is 40 meters high. He calculated a little, 20 meters underground. Interesting, such a deep secret room was built. When he came to the stairs, he was surrounded by a dark and cold atmosphere. A strong resentment gradually deepened, and an empty passage appeared in his eyes. A man's angry voice came from the depths of the passage. Lin Yi thought about it and turned off the flashlight mode of his mobile phone. The surroundings were completely plunged into darkness. He held the wall with his left hand and walked towards the front of the passage. There was no sound under his feet. He moved forward about 10 meters, and a faint light came into his sight. A huge basement with a diameter of about 20 meters appeared in his eyes. A strong stench came into Lin Yi's nose. This was the smell of corpses, which made him narrow his eyes. Looking from the passage toward the basement, there was a fluorescent light on the top, and on the ground were piles of corpses. These corpses were highly decomposed, but they all had one characteristic. On the head, there was a blur of blood stains, which looked like fatal injuries. At this moment, on this pile of corpses, Chang Sui looked hideous, trembling all over as she looked in front of her. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 16. Wang Jiandai's illusory figure stood there, shouting at Chang Sui frantically. Bitch, I provide you with food and shelter. I let you wear nice clothes, ride in a luxury car, and attend high-class dances that you will never be able to attend. You actually committed adultery with a lowly security guard. You also poisoned me. You are a vicious woman. You are a lowly embryo, born with low bones. You didn't expect that I would become a vengeful spirit. Come on, kill me, don't you want to kill me? Ha 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 ha. Open your eyes and see what you have done to me. Wang Jiandai stared, and his suit began to decay. His whole body was highly rotten, with pieces of rotten flesh hanging on the white bones, looking extremely terrifying. His hands were almost turned into white bones, with countless rotten flesh hanging on them. His face was full of pits and rot, and one of his eyeballs had fallen out. Ah! Chang Sui was going crazy when she saw this scene. Looking at Wang Jiandai who was approaching her, Chang Sui waved her hands frantically. At this time, her claws were pale, like bones. Her originally beautiful hands looked very strange, like a pair of ghost hands, full of death. But the claws passed through Wang Jiandai's body, just passing through a phantom, leaving no trace at all. Ha ha ha, it's useless. I am a vengeful spirit, martial arts are useless to me. Bitch, you actually stole the ghost claw of the underworld passed down in my family. Most of these people were caught by you to practice martial arts. You also threw my body here. The sting on the tail of a wasp is the most poisonous woman's heart, the ancients did not deceive me. Today I will enforce justice on behalf of heaven, avenge my hatred, and kill you, the poisonous woman. Go to hell. As he said, Wang Jiandai seemed to no longer be able to control the resentment in his heart, and grabbed Chang Sui. His claws were pale, and his crazy and ferocious face flashed with pleasure. Chang Sui's face was terrified and pale. No, 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 don't come over. You forced me to do it, you forced me to do it. If I don't kill you, I will die in your hands sooner or later. You deserve to die, Chang Sui screamed hysterically. Her face was equally terrifying and ferocious, no longer dignified and gentle. Wang Jiandai's face was ferocious, and he had no intention of stopping at all, and he was about to pounce on Chang Sui. It seemed that in the next moment, Chang Sui would be torn into pieces and turned into a pile of flesh and blood. But at this time, a cyan gold light ball shot out from the entrance of the passage. A muffled sound. Bang. Ah, it hurts. The cyan gold light ball hit Wang Jiandai's chest, as if he was hit by a heavy hammer, and his body was instantly smashed away. Chang Sui only came back to her senses from the panic at this time and looked at the entrance of the passage. There, Lin Yi's figure slowly walked out of the darkness. As if she saw a savior, she climbed down the corpse frantically and rushed towards him. Kill him quickly, I'll give you more money. 1,000 gold coins, give you 1,000 gold coins. Hearing Chang Sui's cry, Lin Yi's face suddenly put on a smile. 1,000 gold coins, thank you so much. His eyes suddenly turned into dollar symbols. At this time, Chang Sui slipped and suddenly rolled down from the pile of corpses and fell to the ground. At this time, a crazy voice sounded behind him, run, don't even think about running, go to hell. Go to hell with me. Wang Jiandai's figure has rushed towards Chang Sui again, clawing at her head with both claws. At this time, Lin Yi's figure has moved, and he blocked Chang Sui with a vertical and horizontal move. This road is blocked, this is my employer. A kick was blasted with great force. The blue gold legs and the ghost claws collided with each other. Crack. With a crisp sound, Wang Jiandai's hands were directly kicked off, and the illusory body seemed to become a solid body. Lin Yi's kick was as powerful as ever, hitting him in the chest. Bang. Wang Jiandai flew up again, but this time Lin Yi didn't stop. He shook his feet, and chased him into the air. He punched more than a dozen fist shadows. Bang, bang, bang. In the air, the rotten body of Wang Jiandai was instantly blown into pieces. He put his fists down and said indifferently, you are still alive now. On the ground, countless fragments were covered by the blue gold light and were melting rapidly. Without a sound, Wang Jiandai's fragments were completely melted by the blue gold light. The whole basement became dead silent, with only Chang Sui's heavy breathing. Is he dead? He seemed to be in disbelief and relief. Lin Yi turned his head to look at Chang Sui, shrugged indifferently, it's not a powerful ghost, it's not difficult to deal with. Chang Sui's face, which was originally filled with fear, calmed down. But it's better to burn the body of this kind of vengeful spirit to ashes. Otherwise, it's hard to say whether it will revive from the ashes. Chang Sui was immediately panicked when she heard this. What, it will revive from the ashes? Her face changed drastically, and she immediately stood up from the ground. At this time, her pajamas were torn into several places, and a spring scene was faintly visible. In this basement where corpses piled up like a mountain, there was a weird feeling. Chang Sui climbed up the mountain of corpses, and the stench was overwhelming. Her feet stepped on corpses full of maggots and rotten meat. The green mucus submerged her feet, but she didn't care at all. She climbed directly to the top of the mountain of corpses, waved her hands, and threw away the dozen corpses on it. Finally, a corpse wearing a suit was dragged out from the inside, and almost only bones were left. In 3 years, Wang Jiandai's body had almost corroded. Even in this low temperature underground, the corpse had already turned into bones. Chang Sui looked hideous, like a demon, and threw the skeleton down with a jump. Looking at the skeleton wearing a suit on the ground, a trace of fear appeared in her eyes. She raised her head and looked at Lin Yi. Her whole body was filled with stench, and the dark green corpse night was stained with her tattered pajamas. Just looking at it, Lin Yi felt a wave of nausea. Chang Sui walked towards Lin Yi, with a strange smile on her face. "Mr. Lin, thank you so much this time." Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. "Nothing, I just give money to others to help them get rid of their troubles. 1,000 gold coins, not a cent less. I don't care about the rest." Chang Sui's expression froze when she heard this, and then a forced smile appeared on her face. "Don't worry, I won't default on the 1,000 gold coins. But please keep what happened here a secret." "Understood. Then I won't bother you. Tomorrow, I hope the money will appear on my table." Chang Sui's face was calm. "I know, there is one more thing. The house of everything I created." Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 17. "I saw you dug out a ring from Wang Jiandai's head. I want it, you give me a price." Lin Yi looked at her strangely when he heard this. "Do you know what this is?" There was a slight difference in her mind. Does she know the origin of this thing? It contains mysterious and strange power. Chang Sui's eyes were gloomy. "That's the wedding ring Wang Jiandai gave me." Hearing this, Lin Yi smiled differently and said, "That's it? It's a pity that I can't give it to you. This thing is my trophy." Chang Sui's eyes darkened even more when she heard this, and she stared at Lin Yi. Lin Yi glanced at her and smiled slightly. "Goodbye then, Mrs. Chang." Turning around and walking towards the passage, Chang Sui looked at Lin Yi's back, her hands hanging slightly bent. A dark light filled it, and her eyes were full of murderous intent. Staring at Lin Yi, her body slowly trembled, as if she wanted to attack Lin Yi. But at this moment, Lin Yi suddenly stopped and turned to look at her. There was a coldness in his eyes, a look she had never seen before, as if he was looking at a pile of rotten meat. A gust of cold air penetrated from her feet to the top door, and she woke up in an instant, and the thoughts in her mind disappeared. She thought of the terror of the other party. The strength that the other party showed that night was simply not something she could challenge. If he takes action, there will probably be only one outcome, death. And if the scene here is exposed, I am afraid that Honglian City will be shocked, and I will be doomed. An ugly smile appeared on her face, and Chang Sui's voice was a little nervous. "Mr. Lin, please go." A sneer appeared on Lin Yi's face. "By the way, let me tell you, everything that happens here is here." As he spoke, he raised the phone in his hand, and a video was playing on it. In the video screen, Chang Sui was prominently among them, along with countless corpses. Her pupils shrank, Chang Sui's face became even more ugly, and Lin Yi turned around and disappeared into the darkness of the passage. Ka. Chang Sui's face was extremely ugly. She clenched her teeth and made a grinding sound. The anger in her heart suddenly appeared on her face, but she could only endure it in the face of Lin Yi's strength. In the freezing and snowy season, Lin Yi walked out of the villa of Chang Sui's family. Feeling the coldness in the air, I looked back at the villa shrouded in countless resentments. Inexplicable shadows kept appearing in their resentment. Their expressions were angry and desperate, as if they were in hell. Lin Yi shook his head. "It's not certain that this place may turn into a lair of evil spirits one day." With a hint of expectation, he left here. Hell is empty, the devil is on earth. This world doesn't seem to be kind either. Early the next morning, as soon as the Wanchaiwu opened the door, the welcoming bell rang, and Chang Sui walked into the Wanchaiwu wearing a fur coat. An exquisite leather suitcase 2 feet square appeared in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi was sitting on his master's sofa enjoying breakfast. The fragrant wind blew into her nostrils, and Chang Sui sat opposite him with a calm expression. "Mr. Lin, this is 1,000 gold coins, not a lot." Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and stretched out his palm covered with light golden light to open the suitcase. A golden light appeared in his eyes. Neat gold coins were packed in the suitcase. There are about 100 in the first row. Lin Yi took the gold coins away and looked at them. There were about 10 floors, each with 100 gold coins, and 1,000 gold coins each. He nodded with satisfaction. Yes, I'll accept the money. I've completed the order this time, and we're settled. Chang Sui took a breath when she heard the words and was about to say something. Brandy came over and brought a cup of coffee. Your coffee. Chang Sui frowned, took the coffee, and said to Brandy, thank you. Brandy looked at Chang Sui's indifference, felt a little disappointed, and turned to leave. Lin Yi glanced at him and shook his head. I want back what you took last night. You can set the price as you wish. Lin Yi smiled when he heard this. You don't have to think about this thing. This is what I use as insurance. As long as you don't cause trouble, I won't let you go. Looking at Chang Sui with indifferent eyes, she felt chills all over. Chang Sui's face was gloomy and uncertain, and she looked tit for tat at Lin Yi. I will definitely get this thing back. After finishing speaking, Chang Sui stood up with a cold expression and left with a scent of fragrance. Ding ding ding. The welcome bell rang again. Brandy looked at Chang Sui, who left angrily at the bar, and said somewhat strangely, Boss, why is Miss Chang so angry? Lin Yi rolled his eyes at her and said, Miss Chang, someone else is 10 years older than you. She is not a kind person, she is very vicious. I'll show you something good. He casually clicked on the video saved on his phone, raised his hand and threw it to the Brandy. Caught it? Brandy watched Lin Yi throw the phone over and quickly caught it. He looked at the video played on his phone with a strange expression. It only lasted a few seconds. The more he watched, the whiter his face became, and his teeth were chattering. A horrified expression appeared in his eyes. Boss, is this Miss Chang? Obviously he couldn't believe the images in the video, the piles of corpses, and the roar of evil spirits. Chang Sui's crazy performance told him how terrifying he thought Chang Sui was. With a forced smile, Brandy hurriedly returned the phone to Lin Yi, as if she didn't want to see what was inside anymore. Lin Yi smiled and said, Be careful in the future, there will be more and more people like this in the future. Don't get too close to these people. Brandy nodded quickly when he heard this. I understand, boss. Taking a deep breath, Brandy quickly went back to work at the bar. Lin Yi sat in his seat, his consciousness sinking into his heart. His consciousness fell on the Book of Strange Spirits, and a new page opened on it. 81 handprints appear on it, forming a lotus. On top of the lotus, a lotus seed exuding hazy light is looming, not visible clearly, as if it is in the clouds. The second set of mudra, it's completely different from the mudra of the true life path. Then what will it do? With a hint of excitement in his heart, consciousness fell into his mind. Next to the interpretation of the true destiny, a second illusory lotus appeared. This week, he has been practicing this second set of hand seals. After he completed the set of hand seals consecutively, this illusory lotus imprint formed in my mind. At this time, in this mark, the petals formed by a handprint exude a faint green light. These green lights were transformed from the black mist he breathed into his body when he crushed Wang Jiandai's head for the first time. So far, he still doesn't know what these black mist are. Obviously, if Foreign Spiritual Sutra wants to be completed quickly, he needs more black mist. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 18. This black mist looks fundamentally different from resentment, and is a very special kind of power. After watching the lotus mark for a while, a ring appeared in Lin Yi's hand. This is the ring obtained from Wang Jiandai's head. There is a ruby the size of a little finger on the ring. It is made entirely of gold and is covered with strange black lines. It looks very strange. Chang Sui said it was her wedding ring, but it appeared in Wang Jiandai's head and had mysterious power. Lin Yi guessed that Chang Sui might have poisoned Wang Jiandai and then inserted the ghost hand into Wang Jiandai's head to kill him. But in the process, the wedding ring got stuck in Wang Jiandai's head. For Chang Sui, she didn't care that the ring was left behind, and she was too lazy to dig it out again. Together with Wang Jiandai's body, he was thrown into the pile of corpses in the basement. After being baptized by his spiritual wave, this ring conveyed a message. The ring of blood. After testing, Lin Yi discovered that this blood ring could produce blood to form 4 tentacles. Each tentacle can attack according to the user's will. But it's not very powerful. The ultimate power of each tentacle is about half of the power of his punch. But this tentacle also carries a dangerous power, blood corruption and attraction. Any creature touched by this bloody tentacle will be corroded, especially living organisms, which are more severely corroded. Once the surface of the body is decayed, the blood in the body will be drawn out by the tentacles, causing rapid blood loss. Lin Yi completely ignored its effectiveness when fighting Wang Jiandai. The reason is that his spiritual wave has a powerful restraint effect on this kind of power. The ring of wailing and the ring of blood were both worn on his left hand. But a grown man wearing 2 rings is too conspicuous. After thinking about it, he put a layer of gloves on his gloves so that no one could tell. At this time, a piece of news was being played on the news broadcast. Yesterday afternoon, several desiccated bodies were found in the city's sewers. This matter has attracted great attention from the police. After comparison of data and fingerprints, these bodies are among the recently missing people. The police have mobilized police forces to begin investigating the matter. Citizens of Honglian City, please pay attention to safety and do not go to unsafe places in the near future. After watching the news, Lin Yi looked outside the Wanchaiwu house. The snow and ice had melted 3 days ago and the weather had become much warmer. There are gradually more people on the street, and a lot of municipal maintenance work has begun again. This is why the body was discovered, and sewer workers began cleaning the sewers. This world is really getting more and more chaotic. Brandy looked at the news with a hint of shock in her eyes. People are dead again, more than a dozen this time. It was reported last night, and it seems that a special investigation team has been set up. This matter is being investigated intensively. Many people said it was caused by evil spirits. The possibility is very high, Lin Yi said with a flat mouth. A strong aroma of steak entered Lin Yi's nose. Is it filet mignon today? Bai Lan nodded, yes, today it's the finest steak and filet mignon made with red wine. The sides are mushroom soup, mashed potatoes, and noodles. Not bad, Lin Yi said with satisfaction. Soon 2 plates of steak and 2 portions of soup were served on the table. Brandy and Lin Yi sat on the sofa and began to feast. Just as the two were enjoying their delicious meal, the welcome bell rang at the door. Ring ring ring. The door to the Wanchaiwu house was pushed open. An old man wearing a black coat, a top hat, a black cane, and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses walked in. Lin Yi saw him at a glance. He was dressed in elegant clothes and had a straight back. Although his face was in his 50s, his body was very strong and he did not look old at all. He looked like an elegant elderly gentleman. When Brandy saw someone coming in, she immediately stood up from her seat and greeted them with a smile. "Guest, this way please." The elderly gentleman nodded slightly, and under the guidance of Brandy, sat on a sofa in the lobby. Brandy looked at the elderly gentleman and said, "Guest, here is the menu." He said and handed over the menu. The elderly gentleman waved his hand, rejected the menu and said, "I'm not here to dine." Looking at Brandy's confused eyes, the elderly gentleman said in a low voice, "You are here as a master house, can you solve all kinds of ghost incidents?" As soon as Brandy heard this, he knew that business was coming. The smile on his face became even bigger. "Yes, this is the Wanchaiwu house, which is responsible for solving all kinds of ghost incidents." Excuse me, what do you call this old gentleman? You can call me Xia. Brandy said politely, Mr. Xia, what type of ghost incident do you want to solve? Mr. Xia looked calm. This incident of resentful spirits happened in my family's cemetery. Last week, the gravekeeper at the family cemetery disappeared. There were blood stains in the house where the tombkeeper lived. Based on the on-site investigation, I feel it was not caused by humans. As he spoke, Mr. Xia took out a brown paper bag from his arms. He opened the brown paper bag and took out the photos and an investigation document inside. All 4 photos are of the same room. The scene in this photo looks very strange, with blood staining the house black and red. You can see that there are many strange palm marks on the wall of the house. There are 5 fingers, but they are very slender and look similar to the shape of a human palm. But this palm is 30 centimeters long, which is very scary. Brandy looked at these photos and showed shock on his face. Can these photos be left? We need to evaluate and give you a reply after we are sure that it can be solved. Mr. Xia frowned, do you still need to evaluate? I want to solve it as soon as possible. At this time, Lin Yi's voice sounded, okay, I'll do it, you go and do your thing. Brandy heard Lin Yi's words, nodded, and said to Mr. Xia. Mr. Xia, this is the manager of our Wanchaiwu Mr. Lin Yi. Lin Yi came to sit opposite Mr. Xia, with a lazy smile, hello, Mr. Xia, I am the manager here. As he said that, he picked up the photos that Mr. Xia brought first, checked them carefully, and frowned. At the same time, he looked at the investigation documents, the rich cemetery in the north outside Honglian City. Mr. Xia, the probability that the person who attacked your family's gravekeeper was a non-human creature is very high. I have my own charging standards here. From the picture in your photo, this thing looks very dangerous. 100 gold coins, half prepaid, I can consider making a move. If it was in the past, seeing the traces in the photo, Lin Yi would never make a move. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 19. Looking at the extent of the damage to the wall, the mysterious attacker was extremely powerful. He was definitely not his opponent before. Although it can be solved now, the price will naturally increase. Mr. Xia frowned when he heard this, 100 gold coins, this price is not low. Of course not, this is a business that risks life. To take money from others and help them get rid of disasters, the money must be in place first. Lin Yi smiled with a lazy look on his face. Mr. Xia thought for a while, okay, 100 gold coins. As he said this, he took out a leather purse from his arms. Without saying anything, he put it directly on the table, and at the same time he left a business card. This is my contact information. If you need anything in this matter, you can contact me. Lin Yi looked at Mr. Xia paying the money readily, and his expression immediately became enthusiastic. Okay, Mr. Xia, please rest assured, I will solve your problem as quickly as possible. As he said this, he picked up the purse and weighed it slightly, and knew that there were 50 gold coins in it. He picked up the contact information with his left hand. There was only Xia Chu's name and a phone number on it. Mr. Xia nodded, stood up and said, then I'll leave first, looking forward to your news. Looking at Mr. Xia leaving, Lin Yi narrowed his eyes, 50 gold coins. Such an accurate number is not simple. Anyone who can carry 50 gold coins with him must have an extraordinary origin. And being able to find me here is exactly half of the mission reward, which is not simple. Have you investigated it? Thinking about it, Lin Yi picked up the phone. Beep. Old way, new order. The last order, a total of 10 gold coins, has been transferred to your account. This time, investigate the rich cemetery outside the city to the north. I heard that a gravekeeper has disappeared recently. Help me check the details. A hoarse voice sounded, Chenbei, I know about this. I will transfer the information to your phone later. The price of this information is 5 gold coins, and it will be transferred to my account as usual. Lin Yi smiled and said, no problem, it's reliable to find you. A few minutes later, Lin Yi looked at his phone and a document appeared in his sight. Chenbei Cemetery Incident Report. Location, Chenbei Sakura Palace Family Cemetery. Time, Red Lotus Calendar January 15, 2019. Event content, Gravekeeper disappeared. On-site investigation content, the crime scene was in the Gravekeeper's duty room. The scene was covered with bloodstains and claw marks of ferocious creatures. Black rotten meat, suspected to have fallen from the murderous creature. Inference conclusion, corpse mutation type ghost, 80% probability, belongs to the Ghost Incident Department. This document is also equipped with many pictures, which are more detailed than the pictures provided by Xiaoqiu, and even has the identification report of the rotten meat. The report has detailed descriptions, and the rotten meat has been treated for more than 10 years. Looking at this detailed data and report, Lin Yi nodded secretly. Corpse type ghost. I haven't encountered it yet. Lin Yi used to solve soul type ghost incidents, all of which were spiritual bodies. This kind of ghost involving entities is the first time I have encountered it. Since it is a physical entity, I have to prepare some special weapons. He stood up and left the lobby and entered his room. Standing in front of the locker, there was a crossbow and a huge mountain-splitting knife. This mountain-splitting knife is as big as his upper body, 30 centimeters wide, and the blade is full of sharp serrations. This kind of murder weapon can definitely cut in two as long as it is pulled on the body. This knife is special, a kind of extremely hard alloy casting, which can even withstand the impact of large caliber bullets. At the same time, his eyes fell on a box in the cabinet. He opened the box and looked at the thin black tights inside. It's time for you to show up. This is the latest tactical suit. Since the world changed 3 years ago, many martial arts masters have appeared. Various equipment related to martial arts masters have begun to flow on the market. This tactical suit and the machete in his cabinet are both of this type of equipment. This tactical suit in his hand is one of the most advanced equipment at present, made of ultra-high fiber composite materials. The structure inside is also compiled according to mechanical transmission, which can absorb impact to the maximum extent. Convert the impact into kinetic energy and store it in the battery of the tactical suit. Even when necessary, the electrical energy in the battery can be converted into kinetic energy and released together with the attack of the martial arts master. Basically, the maximum kinetic energy that can be released is half a ton, and the battery capacity is 3 tons. After the suit is fully charged, there are 6 opportunities to increase strength, which is a huge killer in life and death battles. The full name of this tactical suit is Multifunctional Combat Suit, and the price is as high as 300 gold coins. In order to buy this thing, Lin Yi almost spent all his savings in the past few years. The mountain-splitting knife is not cheap either, 50 gold coins, and it is bought together with the multifunctional tactical suit. The reason for buying these two equipments is that the world is becoming more and more chaotic. Lin Yi's future opponents may not all be vengeful spirits, and he may encounter martial arts masters. Even hot weapons, this multifunctional tactical suit can even defend against the shooting of large caliber firearms. Of course, the premise also depends on one's martial arts cultivation, whether one can withstand the extra impact of hot weapon bullets. After all, in addition to the direct destructive power of bullets, the impact force can also cause death. These two pieces of equipment are good things to improve strength, whether for self-protection or fighting. Put on the suit, the whole body is one piece, even the palms and soles are one. Turn around and put on the coat, then put on the boxing gloves, wrap the machete, and carry it on the back. You can't tell what kind of weapon it is. After everything was ready, he returned to the lobby and glanced at Brandy. You watch the store by yourself, be smart, I'm going out. Brandy smiled slightly, I know, don't worry, store manager. Ringing. After leaving the Wanchaiwu, Lin Yi directly hailed a taxi. Sitting in the back seat, the driver was a middle-aged uncle with a big belly and looked very greasy. Looking at Lin Yi in the rearview mirror, the driver uncle spoke. Where to go? The cemetery outside the north of the city. The driver was stunned, looked back at Lin Yi, and then turned around to start the car. Woo. The taxi started and drove along the road to the north of the city. Lin Yi in the car looked at the street scenery passing by outside the window. Snow water was flowing on the ground, and the temperature was rising. Spring would come in a few days. The driver drove the car and a rough voice sounded, Brother, why are you going to the cemetery in this weather? Lin Yi glanced at the driver and smiled, I got a job and I have to go there. The driver looked weird, what job? Is it a secret date with a noble lady? The house of everything I created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 20. Looking at the driver's lewd smile, Lin Yi pursed his lips, you think too much, will that noble lady go to the cemetery for a date? The driver shook his head and said, that's not necessarily true. Recently, several of my colleagues said that the cemetery outside the north gate of the city has received orders for beautiful women. I heard that the beautiful woman has an attractive figure, a slender waist, an E-cup, and an extremely beautiful face. I heard that someone had a taste of the novel after chatting with the noble lady. I was so excited that I almost died that night. That woman seems to live in a small village near the cemetery. You are not going to find that woman, are you? The driver looked lewd. It seemed that he really wanted Lin Yi to admit that he was going to find the woman he mentioned. Lin Yi smiled and looked at the driver, are you sure that you met a person? The lewd driver was stunned when he heard the words, and then his whole body was horrified. He braked suddenly and looked at Lin Yi with horror. You said it was that kind of thing. Lin Yi spread his hands, I didn't say that, you said it yourself. The driver's face was a little pale, and he forced a smile, don't scare me. The taxi started again, and this time the driver didn't talk nonsense again, but his face was uncertain. He muttered something in his mouth, as if he thought of something. Damn, I can't be so unlucky, he whispered, and only he could hear it. Lin Yi glanced at him, and a green light flashed in his eyes. A black air enveloped the driver, dimming the three fires on his head and shoulders. Sure enough, he met a dirty thing, this guy must be the protagonist of the story, he said. There is no such thing as a romantic encounter in this world, there are more vengeful spirits taking lives. Lin Yi sneered, and had no intention of lending a hand to help him. This guy was entangled by the black air, and he was bound to get a serious illness. It seems that there are more and more vengeful spirits in this world. Even if you take a taxi, you can meet people with vengeance. Shaking his head, Lin Yi felt that the Red Lotus realm was becoming completely different from the past. The wretched driver finally sent Lin Yi to the cemetery in the north outside the city in trepidation. After Lin Yi paid him 10 imperial coins, he fled in a panic. This world also has paper money, which is mainly used for small transactions, and large transactions usually use gold coins. Recently, the Red Lotus Empire is issuing electronic currency. I heard that a nationwide electronic currency software will be established, which will be sold uniformly by the Imperial Bank. Looking at the banknotes in his hand, Lin Yi shook his head, this world is becoming more and more like the Earth, and it is developing rapidly. It was still noon at this time, and the sun was high, although the air was still very cold. Lin Yi's eyes swept across the cemetery, covering an area of dozens of square kilometers, stretching across the mountains in front of him. The northern area outside the Red Lotus city is a mountain range of varying heights. In the past, it was just a bare area, and for some reason, no plants grew. Throughout the dynasties, this place has been used as a place to bury corpses. Many families have family cemeteries here, which have been passed down from generation to generation, and some family tombs can even be traced back thousands of years. These family cemeteries are generally built with walls, closed and guarded by special people. Celebrities and wealthy businessmen are often more superstitious than ordinary people and believe in feng shui. Lin Yi walked straight towards a private cemetery at this time. The cemetery in the north of the city was not messy. In the era before the establishment of the empire, the world was also in chaos. Many ownerless tombs were dug up and various burial objects were stolen. During the Red Lotus Empire, the empire planned and rectified this place. The cemetery area became very neat and was reasonably used and planned. He had Lao Wei's information and reports in his hand, so he naturally knew where the cemetery with problems recently was. Soon he came to the cemetery area located on a hill. The walls around this cemetery are made of blue stone, which looks at least a few hundred years old. The wall was covered with moss and vines, all of which spread out from the top of the wall. At the top of the wall was a trench for planting vines, which was obviously carefully designed. Without looking carefully, Lin Yi came to the gate of this private cemetery. The gate here was closed and sealed by the empire. Frowning, Lin Yi looked at the height of the wall, which was about 2 meters. He walked around the wall and found no other entrance. After thinking about it, he climbed over the wall from a position outside the wall. After entering the cemetery, it can be seen that the cemetery is about tens of thousands of square meters. Hundreds of meters in length and width, half of the land is now filled. Sitting on the wall, Lin Yi's eyes showed a faint green light, looking at this tomb. It was blank, without any traces. He couldn't help frowning, no traces at all. Jumping down, Lin Yi landed lightly on the ground. His eyes fell on the gate of the cemetery, where there was a guard room. After a few steps, the door of the guard room was damaged. Entering the room, it was a square room of about 20 square meters. Wooden floor, brick walls, wooden tile roof, it looked a bit old. There was a desk, a bed, a set of tables and chairs, and 2 doors at the back. One seemed to be a toilet and bathroom, and the other was a kitchen. Although small, it was well equipped, suitable for one person to live in for a long time, and it seemed to have a solar power generation device. Simple household appliances were also available, including a refrigerator, satellite TV, electric lights, induction cooker, etc. At this time, all kinds of furniture in the room have been damaged to varying degrees. There are sharp claw marks and traces of bullet shooting on many pieces of furniture. One of the walls is full of steel ball bullet holes, which seem to be weapons such as shotguns. There are a lot of black dried blood on the walls and furniture in the house. It is obvious that it was left by the guard who was originally guarding here. It should be that the head was cut off in an instant, and a lot of blood gushed out to cause this scene. Looking around carefully, combined with Lao Wei's information, Lin Yi determined part of the situation of the deceased at the time. He walked to the desk, and there were 5 cracks of more than 10 centimeters on the tabletop of this desk. The cracks directly pierced the 3 centimeter thick tabletop completely. After thinking about it, Lin Yi stretched out his hand, and his 5 fingers glowed with a faint golden light, and suddenly slapped it. Click. A palm print appeared on an intact tabletop, and the 3 centimeter thick wood was completely smashed. Comparing the 5 claw marks, Lin Yi thought, it's not necessarily stronger than me. Then there's no problem, we can deal with it. With a flash of green light in his eyes, Lin Yi began to observe whether there were any traces of resentful spirits in the house. The various colors of light filled the place, but there was no black resentment. No. It seems I have to stay here for a night. Looking around, Lin Yi moved a chair, sat outside the house, picked up his phone and started browsing the web.